Welcome back to Axios House, and it is like 29 degrees outside. It feels like 23, which Axios CEO and co-founder Jim Vandehei must feel like Oshkosh, Wisconsin.
Balmy.
Is it balmy weather here?
It's cold either way. It's cold.
This is your first World Economic Forum.
It is.
Impressions?
It's like if anybody were watching and you shut down your block at home and you basically jammed a bunch of CEOs and their entourages into all the houses and you're able to go visit all of them, that's kind of Davos. And so there's just a lot, the density in terms of the number of people that you know or that you might want to know that you could potentially do business with is kind of off the charts. And I think that's the attractiveness.
And so as a CEO, can you speak to that, sort of the value add for you of coming here and being able to meet with all of those people? Like, it's worth it.
For sure. I mean, remember, most people, especially if you think across sectors or companies, they're scattered all over the world, certainly all over the U.S. And so it's really inefficient to go see them in person. Whereas here, you can walk up and down and you can see CEOs, their top aides, political leaders, and everyone's kind of accustomed to these half-hour to an hour meetings. So you're able to jam in 10 meetings in a day and do in one day what might take you months to do if you weren't here. So I get the attractiveness. I just thought it was a boondoggle before, and now I realize there's actually a lot of utility to it.
Well, and then I'm kind of curious about the people who are not having a lot of high-level meetings. Talk about the serendipity of Davos and just sort of running into people and meeting people. Does that happen for you too?
Way more. I bumped into way more people here than I would.
Like who?
I mean, not like household
I just
names,
saw
but
John Kerry walking down the street. I will tell you.
You'll run into someone like John Kerry, but it's really from a business standpoint, it's usually the people that you're tactically talking to, that it might be an ad buyer, they might be somebody who could be a subscriber, they might be somebody who provides a service, and you're able to have a conversation with them. And in person's great. Like, we just came out of a whole hibernation period where people were working from home and not seeing each other. And so in terms of the volatility or the velocity of business you can get done, it's really high. And so I really do get the attractiveness in a way I didn't before.
So let's talk about volatility. The official theme here is about rebuilding trust. What are CEOs telling you? Is it about economic uncertainty or worries about the future?
Yeah, I haven't heard a whole lot of talk about rebuilding trust. I've heard a lot more talk about basically just the amount of volatility around people. Right? If you're a CEO, that's what you're thinking about. You basically want a predictable business environment so you can make sane investments with some reasonable expectation of a return on your investment. Well, when you have political volatility and economic volatility and social volatility, it makes your job that much harder regardless of what sector you're in. So a lot of the conversation is about the root causes of volatility, and those root causes are many, but the big ones that are talked about here are AI, new technology hitting every dimension of every workplace, every industry, regardless of what you do, just changes things. So that makes things volatile. It makes people nervous about whether or not they're going to lose their job, makes business leaders excited that they might be able to do things more efficiently, more effectively. So that's a dimension. And then there's the political dimension, right? You have back in the States, you have the Iowa caucus, but when you look around the world, you have more people voting this year in elections than we've ever had vote in an election year ever. And in a lot of those races, you have kind of a Trump versus Biden dimension where you have populism and you have, immigration or migration tension beneath that. So when you have that, those two in particular, it just gives you a ton of volatility. And that also helps explain the dimension of economic uncertainty, because when you have new technology and you have political confusion or political upheaval, the economy tends to react to that. So right now, everyone's walking around feeling like, oh, wait, man, maybe the economy's a little bit better than I thought. But everybody realizes like that, if things go south in the Middle East, if China does something in Taiwan, if Russia gets more aggressive in Ukraine, then suddenly it has an effect on everything from your energy supplies to your shipping lanes, just to the broader economic environment. And so I think there's no CEO who's not thinking about it. Which then brings me to your first question, like, why do people come here? Well, you can see Zelensky, or you can see John Kerry, or you can listen to Tony Blinken. And as a CEO, your gig is you're trying to figure out how all those things affect your individual business. And I think that's like the roots of Davos. And obviously a lot of people are like, oh my God, the global elite, which I hate that term and I sort of hate the concept. But it really is, right? It's a bunch of people who run companies, and people who run companies do business together. And when you can meet somebody in person and do business with them, you probably do better business.
Last question. What have you what's the intelligence or impression? Is there anything that's really surprised you about these past couple of days as you're going to be taking back and applying to thinking about running a media company?
I don't know that anything has shocked me. I will say, I guess last year everybody was talking about, whoa, there's going to be this new generative AI. And now all the talk is, oh, I'm taking generative AI and I'm putting it to work. I will say that 70% of my conversation, people are talking like they're putting it to work, but they're talking
just putting AI into the conversation.
They're just talking. I think they desperately need to understand the technology and how it's going to affect their business. It's still a baby, and they're still at the beginning of it. So there's just a lot of conversation and curiosity about, well, what works, what doesn't work, how do I apply it to my company? Like, everybody's now on AI. You walk out here and everything is .ai or AI. I feel like I'm going to run into someone from McDonald's and they say, hey, we're a cheeseburger AI company. Like, everybody wants to be sort of the cool person using the new technology. But it's real. Like, anybody, it's funny because I'll still see it and read about it. But I'm skeptical of AI. Like, you can be skeptical of it, but it's happening. And when you have this many big companies putting this much money and this much mind share into something, they're going to will it into existence probably faster than you think, and therefore to roll out across business faster than you think. And therefore you have a lot of people talking about AI.
Axios co-founder and CEO, Jim Vandehei. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And thank you for watching. You can follow along all of the content that we're producing here at Axios House. Follow our social pages. You can also find us on Axios.com. You can check out my podcast, Axios One Big Thing, which will be Davos themed this week. Up next in this seat, Axios publisher, Nicholas Johnston.
I'm here with Qualcomm Chief Sustainability Officer Angela Baker. Hello, great to see you again.
Nice to see you again.
We're back on the promenade. We're halfway through a week of Davos. Tell me what's jumping out in your mind here.
I think the energy's really great. It seems like it's bigger this year. There's more people here. There's a ton of talk around AI. There's a ton of talk around sustainability. Really exciting issues being brought up.
AI, we hit that with Dawn yesterday. Let's dig deeper on sustainability, close to your heart. Tell me what the vibe is, what people are talking about, what's really interesting about it.
I think there's a lot of folks here focused on it. There's like a chief sustainability group that's being run out of WEF. I think there's a lot of focus on data, getting really accurate data, particularly around emissions. So there's been lots of good conversations with other companies and with governments around these like really big issues because there's a lot of regulation coming for it.
On the data angle, is there a nexus between sustainability and AI? Is that sweet spot where how AI can serve some of those goals that you're picking up on?
Definitely. I think there's going to be lots of use cases for how AI can make companies more efficient, the way you run your buildings or the way that you collect your data. Also, from a Qualcomm perspective, we're pushing on-device AI. That's going to be more energy efficient than, if it has to go to the server or go to the cloud all the time. So I think there's a huge nexus there between the two.
Is there a particular message you are hearing or maybe even delivering when you're talking to government officials on that regulatory aspect, or like actions that they should be taking, what you hope the direction they're moving in?
Well, governments are taking a lot of action already on regulation. I think Europe is leading in this. They're coming out with the CSRD. A lot of companies are going to be in scope, including American companies. Of course, the SEC is taking up climate in the U.S. So I think it's just working with them to ensure that it's robust data that makes sense for companies from a business perspective.
And so this isn't really from a regulatory standpoint getting people moving, it's keeping that momentum.
Keeping that momentum, exactly. Yeah, that's right.
Before we wrap up here, give me one fun thing, one takeaway. What's the coolest thing you've heard about? What's the coolest thing you've seen as you wandered the promenade here?
Well, I mean, I hate to be self-promotional, but we had a great party last night at Qualcomm House. We had a lot of good folks come out, and I think there's really good energy tonight. There's a couple of nightcaps, so we'll see. I don't know.
Thanks so much for being here, Angela, and everybody stick around. We have a lot more conversations coming from the promenade here in Davos.